I returned to the 1980s, and the first thing I did was get a marriage certificate with my childhood sweetheart, who had suddenly come home for a visit, all while hiding from my company commander fiancé. In my previous life, my mother was seriously ill and wanted me to have someone to rely on, so I begged my fiancé, James Carter, to marry me quickly to fulfill her long-cherished wish, but he took advantage of the situation. The first time, he agreed to come with my parents to propose marriage only if I gave up competing for the advanced element honor and handed it to his little childhood sweetheart. The second time, he said he would hold the wedding if I kowtowed 99 times in prayer for that girl. The third time, he finally agreed to get a marriage certificate with me, but only if I accepted her child. I swallowed every condition, just so my mother could pass without regret in her final 3 months. But then, I witnessed him standing by my mother's bedside with that girl, saying, "Auntie, I shouldn't have helped Sarah deceive you. The proposal and the wedding were staged for you. Even the marriage certificate was forged. Emily and I are truly in love. Please don't hold it against us in the afterlife." My mother, in a fit of rage, had a seizure right then and died despite the doctor's efforts. When I asked James Carter why he did it, he sneered, "If my father hadn't forced me to marry you, do you think I'd ever have looked your way?" It turned out he had never loved. Met here was no affection, no guilt, only a long-planned revenge. And as I stood frozen in shock, his beloved childhood sweetheart shoved me down the long cemetery steps. My head struck the stone hard, and I died instantly. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the very day my mother asked to see me married and settled. That day, Sarah came to me for help, and though I didn't say much, I knew it was a life-altering decision. William had just returned from aviation school, visiting relatives, covered in dust. The moment he stepped off the train, I dragged him straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Pulling my ID from my bag, I stared him down. "Don't talk nonsense. Come with me and get the certificate. Do you dare?" Without hesitation, he blurted out, "What's there to be afraid of?" And just like that, the red stamp was pressed down. William and I were legally married. As reality sank in, he looked a little startled by our impulse, stuffed the entire 200 yuan military allowance he had into my hands, and with a rare serious expression said, "Sarah, I know you're marrying me to fulfill your mother's wish, but we still have to follow tradition. Take this first. I'll make sure to give you the proper betrothal gift later." Before I could even explain, William blushed and told the driver to hurry up. As I opened my palm and saw a small note buried among the bills, I smiled to myself. "In 3 days, I'll give you a grand wedding." This silly boy, what can I even say to him? In the hospital ward, when my mother saw the marriage certificate, the light returned just a little her dim eyes. "Good," she said weakly. "I was so afraid you'd end up alone with no one to rely on. Now I can pass peacefully." I held back my tears and told her not to say things like that. Then, as if remembering something, she suddenly frowned. "But didn't you like James Carter before? The Carter family already said they wanted to marry you. Why did you get the certificate with William?" She was right. Everyone in the army compound knew I had feelings for James Carter. After my father died saving Commander James, that same commander immediately arranged for James Carter to marry me. But a melon forced off the vine won't taste sweet. I couldn't bear to watch my mother be driven to her death by James Carter a second time. Since my father saved Uncle James, the choice this time was mine. I leaned toward my mother and gently stroked her frail cheek. "Mom, don't you want me to marry William?" She chuckled softly. "Of course not. You know I like that boy the most." She really had praised William countless times, sometimes aloud, sometimes between the lines. How could I not know? William and I grew up together. I was always getting into trouble. He always helped me clean up the mess. During my first year as a reporter, I went alone into a gang hideout. If William hadn't somehow caught wind of it and come to my rescue, I wouldn't have lived to see 23. He ended up bedridden for a month. My mother always said, "Who else but William would treat you so well? If you don't hold on to him, you'll regret it one day." And as it turns out, she was right. Carefully, she tucked the marriage certificate into the drawer beside the bed. "William is dependable. The William family has deep roots. They'll be able to protect you. But we still have to inform the Carters." I'll call Commander James later. Her voice trembled, and I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. She had planned my entire life for me. I nodded silently, not wanting her to see my sadness, and quietly left the ward. I hadn't expected to run into James Carter right outside the door. My body reacted before my brain could. I snapped. "What are you doing here?" He looked shocked. I had always spoken to him gently so much, so that our friends from the compound used to joke I'd gone from a tomboy to a soft-spoken girl just for him. His face darkened. "I heard you and Emily are both competing for the advanced element. The newspaper only has one spot. Can you give it to her? Name any condition except marriage." I froze. That wasn't what he said in my past life. Back then, he used this exact situation to threaten me. He said if I didn't back out of the competition, he'd delay the engagement and stop his parents from proposing. I was afraid my mother wouldn't live long enough to see me married, so I gave in. Could he have been reborn too? I didn't have time to think. Emily came rushing around the corner, grabbing his arm with teary eyes. "Brother James, I don't want you to beg her. If anyone's to blame, it's me for not having a powerful family. I can't compare to Sister Sarah's background. Of course the newspaper staff would pick her." My fists clenched. So this was how those rumors started, that I got into the newspaper, through connections. But it was her shady behavior that poisoned the well. During the entrance exam, I had the top score by far. Yet somehow, I was accused of stealing the test. While the investigation dragged on, Emily, who scored second, was hired immediately. I wasn't allowed to retake the exam until the truth came out. I compared the handwriting on the anonymous report myself. It was Emily's. James Carter sneered. Background? Brigade Commander Sarah is gone, and Secretary Huang already knows there's only 3 months left. Sarah, what will your family even have in 3 months? My heart clenched tight. Anyone else could say that, but not James Carter. If it hadn't been for saving his father, my dad wouldn't have died, and my mom's illness wouldn't have relapsed from the trauma. Seeing me trembling, James Carter softened his tone a little. I didn't mean to say it so harshly. You forced me. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I opened my mouth to speak, but just then, Emily, taking advantage of the moment when James turned away, grabbed my wrist and slapped herself with it. Pa. My palm stung instantly as she collapsed to the ground, wailing, "Sister Sarah, it's fine if you don't want to give up the quota. I won't blame you. But you can't hit me just because you can't stand me. I won't argue with you, all right?" I stumbled back, stunned, eyes wide in disbelief. James Carter's face twisted with rage as he stared at me like I was a monster. It was the first time I'd ever seen him so protective of someone else. "Sarah, that's enough. If anything happens to Emily, I swear I'll never marry you in this life." Without hesitation, he carried her toward the emergency room. His shoulders slammed into mine, leaving a dull ache. I turned to look at his retreating figure and suddenly remembered that summer at the reservoir. A girl had been struggling in the water. I was about to shout for help when a tall, skinny boy dove in and pulled her out. He looked back at me and asked if I knew how to do CPR. I'd been too stunned to speak. Even now, I could still picture that moment, his silhouette dripping wet, but I no longer had any illusions about James Carter. Emily's hospital room was right next to my mother's, and I couldn't understand how she had gotten those bruises or why she was hospitalized at all. Late that night, while I was working on a manuscript in the corridor, James came out to smoke. He sat beside me, casually draping his arm along the back of my chair. "Sarah, just tell your mom already I won't marry you. I'm a person, not a pawn for James Chonglin to repay favors with. Why should I marry whoever he tells me to? Even if the old man forces me to death, I won't go through with this act anymore." In the past, sitting that close would have left me speechless. But now, I only wanted to question him. He hated his father, yet instead of resisting him directly, he retaliated against me and my mother. What had we ever done to deserve that? What debt did my family owe him? I would never forget the look in my mother's eyes as she died wide open and filled with sorrow. But when I opened my mouth to say it, even the anger felt pointless. I scoffed coldly. "Even if you wanted to marry me, I might not want you anymore." James looked stunned. The cigarette ash slipped and burned the back of his hand. I watched his expression turn distant, unreadable. Then he laughed bitterly. "You don't need to provoke me. Your dad risked his life to save mine just to help you get your way, right? What else does your family do besides scheme? A cold draft came in through the window and slapped me like a warning. My father had died in the line of duty, protecting his superior. The engagement wasn't our idea. Commander James proposed it himself right there at my father's funeral, trying to maintain a heroic image of gratitude. My mom and I had never forced anything. The only mistake I made in my previous life was urging James Carter to marry me quickly, thinking he simply wasn't ready. I never imagined he saw me as a parasite in me whole family, as opportunists clinging to a debt of honor. Believe it or not, James Carter, I said, 3 days from now, Swan Hotel. Come see for yourself. I stood up, waved away the smoke between us, and pointed to the no smoking sign behind him. His pupils quivered slightly, and he lowered his gaze, quietly stubbing out the cigarette. Just for a moment, his expression darkened. I grabbed my manuscript and walked away, but things didn't end there. The next morning, after returning from the water station with a kettle, a cold hand suddenly gripped the back of my neck and dragged me into Emily's hospital room. I wrestled free and looked up. It was James Carter again. Sarah, he said, ice cold, I thought you really gave up on marrying me. I didn't expect you were just waiting for me to let my guard down so you could kill Emily. He held up a syringe with traces of medicine inside. When did you spike her for? If I had been a second later, Emily would have died. Do you understand that? Emily's face had flushed, as if from an allergic reaction, but her eyes glimmered with smugness. Forget it, Brother James. My life is worthless anyway. If Sister Sarah wants it, then let her have it. That way, no one will fight her for the promotion, and no one will compete for you. Then she grabbed a fruit knife and sliced toward her own neck. No. James Carter lunged forward, grabbing the blade barehanded. Blood splattered across the floor. Clang. The knife fell. James turned to glare at me, with pure hatred in his eyes. I couldn't help but think back to the 2 humiliating conditions he had imposed in my previous life. Emily had also threatened suicide back then and ended up in a coma for 2 days. James told me he couldn't have peace of mind until she recovered, and only then would he marry me. He made me kneel and cow down 99 times to pray for her. I did it. Then she suddenly got pregnant, and James said he couldn't let her reputation be ruined. He asked me to raise the child as my own. Just so my mom could rest easy, I agreed. So even if Emily always moaned that she was just a kitchen girl, unworthy of anything, the truth was I was the one who had been discarded like trash. I was the fool who let them use me over and over. James grabbed my wrist with his bloody hand. Apologize to Emily. Otherwise, even if my father ties me up and drags me to the Swan Hotel, I will never marry you. I burst out laughing. Was he serious? One by one, I peeled his fingers off my wrist. Keep dreaming. His blood stained my skin. I went to the bathroom and scrubbed my arms raw. When I entered my mother's ward again, William was peeling fruit for her. I don't know what kind of wedding dress you like, he said shyly, so I brought a few sets Chinese style. Western style, you can pick one. William was usually rough around the edges, but when it came to marriage, he was suddenly bashful, like a flustered little quail, barely able to finish his sentences. My mother, rarely amused these days, chuckled softly, and even I, still stung by the wounds James Carter left, began to feel lighter. Behind the curtain, I tried on dress after dress, and William just stood there wide-eyed. He leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Even if this is just a fake marriage, you're really beautiful." His voice grew lower, and his cheeks redder with every word. I couldn't resist teasing him. "Thank you." William blinked in shock and shouted, "Oh, come on, good buddy, you're saying that?" I don't believe you. But I remembered when he pinned James Carter to the ground in front of my grave and beat him half to death. I thought I was a good buddy. Every year on the anniversary of my death, he brought red roses to visit me, and I thought I was just a good buddy. My mother laughed out loud at our antics, but outside the door, a pair of eyes was watching us. Sure enough, it was James Carter. 3 days flew by, and on the morning of the wedding, I left the hospital to get married while still caring for my mother. But James Carter blocked the doorway, refusing to let me pass. "So, Sarah, when gentle tactics don't work, now you turn to force?" he scoffed. "What's next? You don't even need me at the wedding?" You're just going to marry someone without me showing up? He eyed the extravagant wedding gifts piled up in the ward. Looks like my dad really shelled out this time. For a second, I suddenly remembered Commander James and James Carter never got along. Had Commander James not told him about the cancelled engagement? No, that wasn't it. James shoved me back into the ward, his hand yanking the shawl off my wedding dress. I gasped and covered my chest in panic. Isn't it great, he sneered, wearing the wedding dress meant for marrying me while flirting with another man? Sarah, I never knew you were so fickle. My mother coughed from behind us as she shouted his name, but James locked the door. No one leaves this room today. If you don't apologize to Emily, don't even think about holding this wedding. His eyes were bloodshot, yet strangely, Emily was locked outside. I grabbed a stool and a kettle and hurled them at him, but he just leaned against the door unmoved. The horn of the wedding car blared 3 times downstairs, jolting me back to clarity. James forced a twisted smile. I get it now. He straightened his shirt and fixed his tie, and that's when I noticed he was dressed in a suit like he was the groom. Bang! The door was kicked open from the outside, and William stormed in, fists flying. James Carter, you bastard. How dare you bully my wife? For a moment, all sound vanished except the sound of William's fists landing. Once, twice, 3 times. James reeled, blood dripping from his mouth. William, what did you say? Sarah's going to marry you. William didn't back down. Yeah, she's marrying me. What? You can't accept it. He raised his fist again, but I quickly had the guards separate them. Even so, William managed to sneak in a few more kicks, and only then did he calm down. Adjusting his tie, he grumbled like a wronged puppy. Sarah, why'd you stop me? He deserved it. I glanced over and saw Commander James approaching, his face stormy. He slapped James Carter across the face, sending him stumbling again. You little bastard, what are you doing? Normally, James Carter would never back down from his father, but today, he stood up shakily and called out, Dad, quiet, almost respectful. He straightened up and pointed at me. Dad, the Sarah family has an engagement with ours. How can you just let her marry someone else? Commander James's jaw clenched. His temples bulged. He raised his hand and slapped him again. The engagement was cancelled long ago. Secretary Huang called our house personally. And where were you? You've been gone 3 days, unreachable. And now you've got the nerve to question me? What should I tell the whole military region that the Sarah girl doesn't even want you? That we tried to repay a favor, but you weren't worth choosing. His voice dripped with cold fury. He glanced at Emily standing awkwardly by the door and shot another glare at James Carter. He didn't need to say anything else. He'd already seen through everything. Get out of here, he ordered, yanking James's collar and dragging him away. James Carter's mother tried to smooth things over with a smile, but cast Emily a warning look before leaving. The wedding went on. William's mother helped mine into her wheelchair. William looked at me and broke into a grin. Then Hushmi feet lifted off the ground. A pair of warm, sturdy arms scooped me up. Just like always, William was direct and unfiltered. Let's see who else dares to snatch my wife now. Both sets of parents beamed with joy. The Swan Hotel was stunning. When we arrived at the banquet hall, I realized how much work William had put in over the past few days. Childhood friends from the compound, buddies from aviation school, even top military leaders came to congratulate us. In my past life, the wedding arranged by the Carter family had looked decent on the surface, but anyone could tell it was just for show. My mother had been anxious for days afterward, asking if maybe the Carter family didn't like me, worried that after death, I'd be treated poorly by my in-laws. I never imagined that in the end, James Carter would even forge the marriage certificate. But this time, I was marrying William. His parents had watched me grow up and always liked me. Not to mention, the wedding caused a sensation. My mother was pushed onto the stage to give a speech, her smile bright and her eyes wet with tears. She said it was better to say things out loud while still alive, and she was right. William nudged my lower back. I turned around, and he leaned down to whisper in my ear. Since this is to fulfill your mom's wish, I had to go all out. Then he paused, looked serious, and added quietly, but if one day you want to pick someone else, just let me know. I'll make sure your next wedding is even grander. I almost burst out laughing. Honestly, what could I do with a guy like him? With the William family's pomp and circumstance, who would dare have ideas about me in the future? I was just about to say something to him when I looked up and saw he was only a few inches away, his sharp brows, star-like eyes, and high-bridged nose so close that for a moment, my mind went completely blank. I used to think of him as just a buddy, loyal, reliable in a fight, smart under pressure. But now my heart was pounding. I thought he's actually pretty kissable. My lips brushed as quickly, too fast to feel anything, and William yelped, "Sarah, what's gotten into you?" I grinned. It's natural to kiss my husband, isn't it? Back when I was chasing James Carter, I always thought he liked girls like Emily, fragile, soft-spoken. Gently so, I forced myself to talk in a whisper, made myself uncomfortable. But with William, I didn't need to pretend. I could be myself. The moment I kissed him, I realized even tomboys could have the talent to become the bossy, sassy type. "What do you mean by you?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "I married you because I want to live with you. The marriage certificate is real, so our marriage is real. We can talk about what's fake later. Believe it or not, I'll smack you right now." I raised the bouquet and playfully waved it above his head. William looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He stood frozen until his comrades egged him on to kiss me. I leaned in and kissed him hard, and only then did he seem to finally believe it was real. Meanwhile, James Carter couldn't understand why I'd married William. Commander James had locked him up at home and ordered him to reflect on his actions. He dug out all the gifts I had given him over the years one by one. I met him when I was 18. The first birthday gift I gave him was a pair of swimming trunks. The girls in the compound teased me for being such a tomboy, bold enough to give something like that. The last gift I gave him, at 28, was an Omega watch. Over those 10 years, I had learned manners, grace, self-restraint. He touched each item and remembered every moment. Without realizing it, tears began to fall. Downstairs, Emily was calling for him. James climbed down the ladder she'd set up and said softly, "Emily, thank you. I'll come back to find you." "What do you mean come back?" "You shouldn't have brought me along in the first place," she said, blushing as she twirled her pigtails with her fingers. Any man could tell what she meant, but James didn't respond. He only asked where I was. He found me on the basketball court behind the hospital, playing with William. William had his arms around me, stealing my ball, and I was laughing, calling him out. It was just like when we were kids. She joked with others, but he only played rough with me. William pouted. "I don't care. When you were chasing that guy James, did I dare touch you like this? You better make up for it during our wedding leave." Suddenly, James Carter stormed over and yanked me away without a word. Neither of us had time to react. "Sarah, how long are you going to keep acting?" he asked, brows furrowed. "I promise I'll marry you this time. I won't make things difficult. Just come back to me." William was about to punch him again, but I stopped him with a quick hand. I knew James Carter. If I didn't make this clear now, he'd keep coming back. I shoved him away. "I'm not acting. I like William, and I want to marry him. I don't like you, and I don't want to marry you. What's so hard to understand?" James looked crushed. He probably hadn't eaten in days. I pulled my wrist out of his grip and said coldly, "Let's not meet again. If your Carter family wants to repay debts, don't do it by sending you to disturb me. I feel sick every time I see your face." He stood frozen, stunned. "Why didn't you choose me?" he whispered. "Did you?" I cut him off with a cold snort. "Yes, I know everything. Was it fun, James Carter? Faking a marriage certificate? Toying with me and my mother like we were jokes? Do you even have a conscience? I've known you for 10 years. Have I ever done anything to hurt you?" His face drained of color. What are you talking about?" I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Since you love Emily so much, go marry her. Why come back to haunt me?" James flinched. Something inside him broke. He suddenly shouted, "I won't marry her. I knew from the beginning she could never compare to you. I just didn't want to be arranged, didn't want to do what my father told me to. It wasn't you I didn't want, it was his control. I just didn't want to marry you because he told me to. Why does everyone get to decide my life? Why?" He dropped to the ground, clutching his head. Behind him stood Emily, her face pale, her eyes sharp as frost. "So, James Carter," she said coldly, "what exactly am I to you?" She was no longer gentle. Her voice shook with rage. Her shadow loomed over him as he looked up with dead eyes. You? You're a tool. A tool I used to defy my father.
Satisfied.
Emily raised her hand, but paused. Her voice cracked. If your dad didn't tell you to marry me, would you have chosen me on your own? James Carter sneered.
No.
Emily, don't think I don't see through you. Even if you try to kill yourself again, even if you pretend to be pregnant again, I still won't accept you. Because I don't like you. I like Sarah. For a second, the whole world went silent. What a joke. I had chased him, blocked his door, confessed my feelings, and he never said he liked me. I brought him food, and when he saw my blistered hands, he never said he liked me. I spoke up for him, begged his father to let him take the Air Force physical exam. He said nothing. Asked why he agreed to marry me, and still, he didn't say he liked me. Only after I died and gave up and fell in love with William then, he said he liked me? What a cruel joke. I shook my head. Don't say another word, James Carter. But he didn't stop. Sarah, give me another chance. I swear I'll never say anything bad to your mom again. Just one chance, please. Before he could finish, William punched him to the ground. Emily screamed. I said flatly, he's not dead. You didn't even hit him that hard. He just has low blood sugar. When the Carter family's driver came to pick him up, Emily stood by the car and cried. I didn't know if she was crying for James Carter or for herself. William scratched his head, apologizing to the driver. I really didn't hit him that hard. He's just too weak. I almost laughed. James Carter, the guy who always won martial arts competitions, knocked out by a pilot. After the wedding leave, William had to return to South City. I stayed behind in the Army compound to be with my mother through her final days. But James Carter still wouldn't give up. Every few days, he showed up at the hospital not to come inside, but to leave something behind. Fresh fruit, bouquets of flowers, and later, some warm porridge. I took one look at it, lumpy, undercooked, clearly made by him, and threw it straight into the trash. My mother knew that James Carter was still trying to win me back and grew a little concerned that it might not be easy for me to be accepted in the William family. But to our surprise, William's mother was incredibly open-minded. That Carter boy deserves to be punished, she said bluntly. Let him send his gifts all he wants. After everything he put Sarah through, there's no way I'm letting him off that easily. I overheard her on the phone with William later, saying, Son, don't worry. I'm keeping an eye on things for you. Sarah won't ever forgive James Carter. That little brat brought an entire banquet today, and our precious daughter-in-law didn't even blink before sending it all back. When I told my mother, she smiled with her eyes crinkling and patted the back of my hand. William's mom is like that, shrewd and sharp, but she knows where her loyalties lie.
She'll protect you from now on.
No one's going to dare mess with you. They chatted and laughed together like that for a while. Nearly 3 months passed. My mother slowly lost her appetite, and eventually, she couldn't eat it all. She lived another half-year. In her final days, she asked to return home, so I took her back to the Army compound. She sat quietly, watching me write, listening as I read her the sappy letters William had sent me over the years. When I read aloud his cheesy lines, she chuckled softly until she no longer had the strength to laugh. William rushed back just in time to see her one last time. She took both our hands, gently placed them together, and said only 3 words. Be fine. She passed away peacefully, still smiling. William's mother comforted me, saying there was no regret, that we should feel happy for her. She told me, your parents are gone, but you still have us. And even if we're gone, you'll always have William. And suddenly, I realized I wasn't afraid of death anymore. Birth, aging, illness, and death are part of life. At my mother's funeral, I saw James Carter again, and I barely recognized him. He had lost so much weight. Commander James quietly told me James had just come down from the mountain, where he'd spent the last 2 weeks praying for my mother. I nodded politely when our eyes met, and James Carter's face lit up. Sarah, does that mean you've forgiven me? Do we still have a chance? If it hadn't been my mother's funeral, William would have knocked him out on the spot. But I felt strangely calm. I smiled and replied, You're overthinking it. I haven't forgiven you. And no, there will never be a chance. I knew he was trying to atone, but I didn't accept it. Later, I moved to South City with William. The newspaper industry there paid better and offered more opportunities. After William transitioned into civil aviation and became a captain, he had more time to spend at home with me. A few years later, Commander William retired, and my clever mother-in-law came to visit more often. From her, I learned that James Carter wasn't doing well. His health had declined. He couldn't return to the army. After retiring, he had no head for business and could only cling to Commander James's connections to get a low-level clerical job. As for Emily, once I left, she thought she could run the newspaper, but she lacked the skill. With newer, more capable people joining, her chances for promotion vanished. Her last hope was to marry a cadre's son, but everyone in the compound knew her messy history with James Carter. No one wanted to introduce her to anyone. After stumbling around, she ended up back with James. But his mother was notoriously difficult and flat out refused to let them marry. So the two of them stayed stuck in that muddled, awkward situation. My mother-in-law scoffed and said she deserved it. I smiled. Today's gossip was juicy. Just as I was about to ask her more, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there was William, grinning like a goofball just like he did when we were kids. "Wife, look," he said, holding out a bouquet of red roses. "Aren't they beautiful?" But this time, he wasn't placing them in front of a tombstone. He was giving them to meth living, breathing woman he loved.